Publishing Addiction Science. It is a gift to be here with you today. Thank you for being here. I'm Carly Searcy. I'm ICU DDR Project Manager, and our presenter for the collaborative is Dr. Richard Pates. He is from Iceage editor. And we are very excited to be working with Dr. Pates again. Where's yours?
Very much. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Richard Pates, and please call me Richard. We want to be informal series, and I see it very much as a interactive thing. So I want you to join in. I want you to ask questions on the answer, that sort of thing. You can have all of the slides, but if you don't necessarily have to take notes. I'm very happy to give you the slides. So why are we running this workshop? One of the things that happens at universities is people get taught to write their dissertations, their masters, their doctorate degree. They get to write papers of about 3,000 words, and this is true whether you're in America or the UK.
I don't record. I apologize for that.
Or wherever you are in the world, this is true that people don't necessarily understand the intricacies of publishing. This is not a complicated series of workshops. It should be very simple. And as I say, take away from it what you will. Please ask questions and please make it interactive. I want you to feel that this is part of you. And one of the things that I've done these several years now, certainly a number of the people that have participated have published, and they've certainly published in my journal. I'm the editor of a journal called the Journal of Substance Use. I'm not saying that you should come and publish in my journal papers, but I'm always happy to receive your contributions. And one of the things is talk about why it's important to publish. This is very much an introductory session, and then we'll go through the whole process next 7 weeks after this week. So after this week, it will be online, but we will work out the best time that suits everybody, so that, because you've got a wide geographical distributions to miss out. Okay, could you just introduce yourselves briefly to say where you're from and what you do? Good, thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. Nice to see you.
I am sound as a clinical psychologist, but as clinical at the end of the and mainly prevention and treatment clinical psychology.
For those online, Charles, Maria, Cannibal, do you introduce yourselves?
Okay, yeah. So my name is Charles Ojako. I'm a lecturer in the University of Nigeria. I do research in the area of addiction and mental health. But also, I'm really interested in health systems, particularly on how to connect issues in mental health in the local health system here, which is really, really busy for some time now. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria? Are you there, Maria? Oh, Cannibal? Hello? Technologies.
Is there anyone else online who'd like to introduce themselves? We didn't lose our folks online. Thank you. Where? In the participant section?
Yeah.
Thank you. Which is there? Oh, yes, I see blue. So we're still good. We have Dr. Orjaker, Carabo, Maria. Yep. Yes. You are welcome to unmute your mic and introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, Maria, we can hear there's a loud noise there.
I'm having that noise.
Okay, thank you. Go unmute.
Okay,
It's okay, Maria. We understand there's loud noise there. Thank you for joining us. Carabo, and I did send a request to for them to unmute themselves. Yep, looks like he has unmuted himself. Carabo Maladi. Thank you.
Hello,
Hello?
can you hear me?
Yes?
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm struggling to. Hello?
Okay. Sometimes it's
Oh,
hard.
I can hear you now.
Yes. Welcome. I'm sorry. Welcome. Dr. Sato, where are you from? That's right. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry to everyone, both online and in presently. Difficult starting off, but I'm sure once we get going, we will have a more fluent session. Now, do I just
Step forward. This
go
one.
forward?
Yep. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to stop the video. That might give everybody a better experience, everybody who's online. And that should let us move forward.
Okay, right. I put my email address on the screen, and please, if you have anything that you want to ask me during the course or after the course, I'll be very happy to correspond with you. Please feel free to use that. It's important that we have an interaction because, as I say, it's not just me talking, it's about us interacting together. Okay. And there is a book published by, I should have mentioned that Iceage stands for the International Society of Addiction Journal Editors. We are a body of people who publish the addiction journals. We don't publish them, but we represent them as publishers. We publish this book to help understand how to publish. And if you look at the bottom at www.iceage.net, it's available free. Download chapter by chapter if you want. And certainly it's well worth using. It's very practical information. Okay, what should we cover? I want to talk about why your papers are important to science. All professionals working in some capacity involved in addiction, and it's important that we understand what happens, and it's important you can communicate to other people. And it also helps your career. You know, if you have published papers, people will recognize you more and it will be helpful to you. So we'll look about how to choose a journal, getting it right before you submit. So understanding the process of submission and editing. And as I say, this is not a highly academic thing, it's a practical thing I want to go through with you, so it just helps. And then the common problems with submissions, what editors want for journals. One of the problems often don't read the instructions for all wrong back, so it's a very important lesson. So why are your papers important to science? What's the goal of a scientific journal? And these are journals which are different from magazines. These are, you will have all the slides. I'll give you all the PowerPoint slides. So have them. We're talking about peer-reviewed journals. So we're talking about journals where your paper is judged by professional people in the field, and that therefore sets a standard. Sets a standard that this is good science. It's not someone that anyone can publish any rubbish in that they think it's solid scientific communication. And it is the most important communication among scientists. Then I'm sure doing your studies, you would have had to go to libraries and read journals, quote journals, and this is what sets the intellectual standards fields, sets the agenda for what to study. And one of the interesting things is that this changes a lot. I must be much older than all of you. And so when I started working in addiction, it was the beginning of the AIDS epidemic. It was very new, know much about it. And therefore that was something which became very important. What we're finding now, COVID, because people are saying what's happening during the COVID pandemic in terms of institutions, how can people get help, sort of thing. So it is really what is current. It also provides an institutional memory because once your paper is published, it will be forever. People get back to it forever. And that's important when you do certain things which have a historical interest. I've occasionally written papers with historical interest. It's important to go back and find that information. Brings information to the public. The public don't generally read scientific journals, but if there's something interesting, then the news media will pick it up and that they will distribute it or they will circulate it. It certifies that your work is authentic, that it's genuine, and as I said, it can advance your career. It's interesting that there have been more and more people working in the field. You compare to other people, maybe a question if you're going for a job or looking into your career, and having papers on your CV is helpful. Now, how do you choose? How do you choose which journal to choose from? Well, there's over 100 peer-reviewed addiction journals in the world, so there's a huge number, and this has expanded hugely over the last 30 or 40 years, I think. If you went back, the first one was published with the journal Liberty or Brian back in the late 1870s or 80s. And then there was a few more came through the beginning parts of the 20th century. And then suddenly in the last 30, 40 years, a lot of years. Some are good, some are not so good. Some are published in their own language, language of their country. But as well as all the addiction journals, then you may choose to publish in psychology, a medical journal, physiology, public health, epidemiology, etc. And one of the things about our field actually covers so many. We come from many. I'm a clinical psychologist. You're a clinical psychologist. You're a clinical psychologist. We have psychologists, have all sorts of people represented, and that's important that you can have papers published on addiction in, as I say, in psychology press or the medical press, whatever. So one of the things that's important is how do you make an informed choice? How do you say this is the best one to submit? Right. Is it a national or international audience you want? Sometimes it may be an issue which is just relevant to you, to your country, to your locality, but it may be more important for international audiences. And one of the things that I've become very interested in is that there is a lot of, it's more difficult if you come from a low middle income country to get your paper published, because I think there's a lot more prejudice. If you've got a big American university or a big British university or Australian, it's easier. So I'm very keen to say, no, everyone should have a choice. What is happening in Nigeria or Kenya or Pakistan or the Philippines or wherever is just as important as what's happening in America or Australia. And in my journal, I publish papers from all over the world. Language. Now, many of the journals published in English, majority are, and it's one thing that's happened since the advent of the electronic publishing and the internet. English has become a much issue, which is a disadvantage for other people. But people can publish. There's a German journal called Sucht. There's Spanish journals and Mexican journals, French journals. If you come from those countries, you may want to publish in your own language, but it may be that you want to publish in English. If it's published in English, it will get a bigger exposure to the scientific community. Disciplinary or addiction specialty journals, well, that's a question up to you. If you publish a paper in your specialty, then that's fine, and I've done that in the past. But also, you might find that some some journals. I lost my thread. Some disciplinary journals might not understand that we have, so it may be that the addiction specialty journal understand the issues that you want to talk familiar with them. What's the journal's content area or culture? Some journals are very much based just on research. Some of them will include opinion pieces. Some only have quantitative research, qualitative research. Range need to look at the journal, what it has. Exposure opportunities. Well, this is a bit old-fashioned now, really, because, as I said, it's all done, especially done electronically. So if you want to know where a paper, if there's a paper on a subject you're interested in, you can look it up on one of the search engines. That will direct you to the paper. Chances of acceptance, that varies enormously, 15% to 100%. So there is a huge choice. So if you want to go for a journal which has a very high, a very low acceptance rate, that means it's a very high quality journal. They get very few. They take a minority of the papers submitted, then that you'll get less chance of being published there. What about impact factor? I'll talk about the impact factor later. It's something people talk about. I don't think it's as out. And practical matters, time to publication. One of the things people sometimes get is a little impatient because a paper gets submitted. It very rarely gets accepted first time. It goes back for revisions. It comes back. We have to rely on the reviewers because I don't review them all. So it can. I've had a paper published within a month. Not myself. I published a paper. No.
Let me come up.
But it can take several months going back and forth. We also rely on reviewers. If we ask someone to review a paper and we say, "Can you do it in 3 weeks?" and they take 6 weeks to do it, it obviously delays things. Try to do it relatively quickly. National or international audience, and again, this is one of the things that I touched on. Is it relevant to a particular national audience, such as clinicians, basic scientists, or policymakers? Does it represent data, local or national interest? If so, consider a journal's audience or language as national in scope. As the article did, universal biological, psychological, or sociological or practical over the world. So consider an international journal or well-indexed English journal. One of the things that I think is actually really important now is that various reasons there is such a movement of people actually things aren't so local anymore. So if you have a problem, I'll give you an example. In this part of the world, people smoke shishas, water pipes. Yeah, it's part of an Arabic culture. Yeah, but it's becoming popular in the UK and America. So it's not just about Arab-speaking countries of Pakistan or wherever. It is actually an international issue. Certainly during COVID, it suddenly became relevant again because when you're smoking a shisha, it's a communal thing, and you might smoke it and then pass the pipe on the mission in that situation. So I'm. If the article deals with universal biological, psychological, or sociological themes that are relevant to scientific professions, consider international or indexed English language. But as I say, the other thing is like global warming making a lot of the problems in the world. We're seeing a lot of refugees coming from places like Syria, other places where suddenly there is, when people become refugees, they also take their culture with them. There may be cultures moving around the world. To find out the journal's focus, read its mission statement, and online all journals should have a mission statement and look at the content and evaluate its editorial. So they usually have list of the papers, so you can see whether what you want to do. And does its editorial board have people that you know, you recognise, and you respect? For an international language audience, English is now the language of choice, but you can publish in several languages. Certainly, that's something that's happened more recently when there was a new a new journal started in Greece. They published several papers that have been published in English journals just to get it. If it's just a national audience, you want published in the language of the country. Disciplinary and special well. Sometimes it's easier to get an addiction journal article published in an addiction journal. As I said, sometimes they don't necessarily understand. However, in some countries, there are no specialty journals. Other channels have to be considered, such as the National Disciplinary Journal. So there may well be no addiction journals, maybe a medical journal or those countries you'd want to publish there. Addiction scientists benefit from contact with other sciences. Disciplinary journals are important. As I said, we all come from different backgrounds. You know, we're not just addiction specialists, we're psychologists, doctors, nurses, whatever. So that's very, very important. And some disciplinary journals have more prestige than specialty journals. If you think about the journal with the highest impact factor, what is probably Nature, Science, and journals that very high impact of American journals. If you get a paper published there, then it has a huge exposure. If you're not sure where to submit, contact the editor. And a lot of people do this to me. They email me and say, I've got this paper on this subject, would you be interested? And I'll give them a yes or no. Consider the journal's content area and culture, consult mission statement for topics, goals, policy, and audience. Get acquainted with the journal's format for articles, subject matter, methodological rigor, etc. It's on the editorial report, as I said. What's the journal's exposure? Does it meet your specific audience, researchers, clinicians, basic scientists, policymakers? You'll find certain professions read certain journals, and so that's quite an important decision. Members of certain professional societies, and societies like doctors or nurses, sometimes publish specialty addiction journals. They have I think there's a lot of nurses working in addiction, and there are specialty journals for them. This one is not really relevant to him. How available is the journal in the libraries? And as I said to you before, I'm the oldest person here. When I trained, I did my first degree in psychology. If you wanted to write a paper, we had to go to the library, find a topic, look it up in a book, go to the library and say, can you send for this paper? So all the papers came print copies. Nowadays, you go to a database and so that's less important. Print circulation used to be important, but it's much less important now. So you might have English language journals might have 250 and 25,000. My journal, when it's certainly, I have no idea what it is now, but it used to have a circulation of only about 100. But then so many people now get their papers online, and that's really how papers are worried that if there's enough subscriptions, maybe my journal will die. But no, my publishers are happy because they get their income from elsewhere. Abstracting and indexing services recording the journal. And what you find in the front of it should be a list of the indexing service and abstracting service work with your journal. Therefore, you go into their database. Things like, well, Google, it's quite a good one actually. Also, Athens. That's impact factor, but only available for English language. The time to be accepted: English language 15 to 95%, non-English 25 to 100%, 25% to 100%. So there's a huge range. Many journals don't want to know their acceptance rates, or do not know their acceptance rates, or do not want to state them. So you have to be careful that they may be trying to hide something there. Acceptance depends on quality and style of the article, originality and the originality of the paper, and administrative resources of the journal. Some journals may help with text and language editing, and this is something worth considering. I mean, when I get a paper in, as I say, papers are very rarely perfect when they come in. They need some work, and that's true. You know, that's a bit of paper, use a bit of paper, all of us. As an editor, what I can't do is spend a huge amount of time correcting all English. So if there's minor corrections, I'll go down. If it's major, I'll say you need to take this back to a native English language speaker for editing, and that's actually really important because no journal will publish a paper until the language is good, is possible. They may help find someone to help you. I suppose it's a problem for any of you anyway. How long to get an article peer reviewed? Well, let's say I get a paper in. I get a paper in today. I'll meet with my editorial assistant within the next 5 days, and we then select a reviewer, and it will go out to the reviewer. And if they say they can do it, then we'd expect a review back in 3 weeks. However, the first you may choose may say, no, I can't do it. I don't have time. It's not my subject area. I don't want to. So you may have to go through that process again. And it can sometimes take you several weeks to get the paper reviewed. How long to acceptance of publication? Well, these days, it's very different because at one time, once your paper is accepted, that means it's been reviewed, you've made all the corrections, goes back, and then it would go to the publisher for printing. That could take 3 or 4 months. If I accept a paper from you now, it will be published online within a fortnight. Now, when it's published online, it is published. Because some people say, oh no, it needs to be published in print. It doesn't. Once it's published online, it's got a DOI number, it's got a reference number, and you quote it. It's been submitted, it's been reviewed, it's been accepted. That's fine. So it will take longer. It will still publish in print, and it will still may take 3 months. That may take even longer, but it is published once it's online. I suspect, and this is my prediction, that in 20 years' time, there'll probably be very few paper journals. I think they'll all be done online, because of course it's expensive producing paper journals and sending that through. Publishers are interested in money, so that would be their main interest. Geographical distribution. Again, that's not really an issue so much now because you can get a paper online for anywhere in the world. So it used to be an issue about how good are the local libraries. It's not so much of an issue now. Special audiences, are there people that you really want to reach? Is it about is it special that you really want to reach certain people? That's up to you to decide who you want to reach. How much editorial support does it give? But as I said, I always try to support people, or try to make a very helpful suggestions, and do some editing of the paper, but I can't rewrite the paper in total. Now, the journal impact factor. Most journals have impact factors, and it's a very strange process because it's determined by the frequency at which articles in that journal were cited. High impact journals have more prestige, but journal impact factor depends on other things like the number of co-authors and indexing. Non-English language journals are at a disadvantage. the number of databases indexing the article to determine who sees the abstract of the article. Now, in practical terms, this means in addiction journals, the range of impact factors ranges from about 0.7 up to about 5. If you look at engineering, pure science journal, 7 that journal. And it's because people go to those sort of things and there's very high, quote them a lot, whereas that they're far less like ours. Addiction subjects, only subject quoting it. So I don't take too much notice of it. Some people, but one of the problems is first, certainly in America and Britain, expect their staff to publish in high impact factor journals. But there's no such thing as a high impact factor addiction journal. So the journal with the highest impact factor is a journal called Addiction that has an impact factor of, I think, 5 or about 5. Oh yeah, the average citation frequency articles published in the journal. How many times on average during the study year articles appeared the 2 preceding years of the journal received citations in other journals. So you publish a paper, and then 2 years after that, how often is that paper cited? That's how the impact factors worked out. But people do try to manipulate it. So they will cite their own papers, their writing paper, which is naughty, or they will use people from their own where they know that there'll be a high rate of citation. So I'm not. It's not something that bothers me, and it doesn't never bother me as self. But some people get a bit excited by it. The importance of diversity, and this is an interesting topic because, as I've said, we are a multidisciplinary field. It's a difficult field to conduct research with a level of control one will wish because of practical and ethical constraints. And we're a field that covers psychology, psychology, medicine, nursing, etc., public policy, epidemiology. And there is a big issue with ethics. When I was back in late 80s, as I said, we were trying to deal with the growing AIDS epidemic, and I was very keen that we should introduce my clinic a needle exchange, try to reduce the rate of infection. Someone from the local government said, well, why don't we have needle exchanges in this city, but not in this city? Then we can compare the rates of infection. And I said, can't do that. That's entirely unethical. That would mean this city is being deprived. So that's a sort of issue. You can't just decide on the basis of, well, let's have a control trial. We'll give this, we won't give that. It's like withdrawing treatment. Leads to genuine disagreement about measures and research designs. And certainly, I found that working as a doctor, I come to a very different conclusion about research than they do. It's a multidisciplinary discipline which will foster disagreements about the importance of particular findings. Now, qualitative research, I don't know whether any of you do qualitative research. I'm very keen on it because one of the things that I think we need to do is listen to the people who are affected by the problem. I'm very keen on listening to the users, drug users, alcohol users, because they can tell us something we as professionals might not know. And too often people aren't listened to. Qualitative research does that. And when I did my doctorate 25 years ago, I did on the subject of needle fixation. That is where people become compulsive injectors. They will like injecting, even if they're not got any drugs to inject. They inject water, inject all sorts of stuff. But there was only one paper that had been published, and nobody really knew what it was about. The only way I could find out was by interviewing people, saying, "Why do you do it? What do you do it? Who do you do it?" And interviewing them individually. And that was one of the lessons to me that the quality research is very useful. Certainly, I think there's certain areas where qualitative research has been immensely important in understanding but some journals publish much qualitative research, and you need to be very careful that you don't get a rough ride from the reviewers or even the editors because they don't understand what you've written. And you need to make sure that there's a rigor in what you're doing, and you're not just taking what people are saying. Certain methodology in qualitative research. And the book that we quoted at the beginning, Publishing Addiction Science, there's a chapter on qualitative research. I'd recommend if you want to do qualitative research, go to that network I mentioned to you, and you can download that. Conclusions, many opportunities. Choose your publication channel wisely. Improve the quality of publishing by making all journals compete for your best articles. And I really do mean that I'm very keen that everyone like you gets the opportunity to publish, because it is something that can help make your career, and it makes it more interesting as well when you've got it published. I used to do workshops with former president of, or one of the former presidents of Iceage, my organisation. He's sadly passed away this year, but he said, I remember doing a workshop with him, and he said, main thing you need to know is don't touch the editor. What he meant by that was there's in every journal there'll be instructions for authors, read them and follow them. And it's simple things like referencing style. There are two basic referencing styles, Vancouver and the Harvard one or the AP. And if you use the wrong style, it will go straight back to you. If your paper is too long, it says please put 3,500 words as I use, and you'll get a paper of 6,000 words, it'll go back. However, if you have a certain quality which does take a bit longer, and you write to me and say, I've done this, and it will be a bit longer, is that okay? Then I'll probably let it go. So it's actually about communicating with the editor. Don't tread on their toes. Most editors are very human because they've all been through the same situation. They're all practitioners, they all publish themselves. And that's a great feeling. And that's presentation. Send your slides so you have those record. And we have about 10 minutes. That's really up to you to ask questions, disagree, put in your experiences, whatever. We haven't, because we only publish in English. But what we can do, sometimes if I have a paper published in English, I could then send it from a language other than English when it published in that. So I've certainly heard that papers have been published in Chinese and in Greek and in other languages where it's possible. It's it will get most exposure when it's published in English, unfortunately. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, but it is one of the realities, I think. Yeah, it is difficult. I accept that, and one of the things that has become more disadvantaged since the days of the internet is English has become even more dominant language because it's mostly done from America or widespread English language use. But having said that, if you publish in English, you will get more exposure, more people will read it. And as I said earlier, one thing I think is most important is the issues you've got locally. Quite often, they're not just local issues. I think one of the things that I thought about one of the morning was the importance of taking cultural issues into consideration, because we all come from cultures, all things happening, but some of the problems are very, very similar throughout the world. It's important.
Was letting us know that they have a hard time hearing what's being said in the room, which we understand because the microphone is here. And I also have a message just for the folks who are here at the conference that I need to share. So we're going to wrap up just a few minutes early, but we're going to schedule our future sessions together. That'll be coming in email. Send a link for the book and also send the PowerPoint so that everybody has that. So for you folks online, thank you so much for joining us, and we will be in touch. Thank you. Okay, just one moment and I'll explain a little bit more. Thank you.